This video is going to be about accents. Accents are accentuated notes, notes that are played louder than all the surrounding notes. So the first thing we need to understand is that stick height equals volume. When your sticks are low, you're going to be soft. And when they're up higher, you're going to be louder. So working with that principle, here's how we're going to get our accent. From starting low, we're going to lift up the forearm from the elbow and hang the wrist. You see my wrist drooping a little bit? So I'm lifting up with the drooping wrist, and then I whip it down into the drum. So I'm lifting from the elbow, up goes the forearm, the hand is hanging. When you get maybe to about armpit height, you whip it down. So the wrist, I don't know if you could see that. If you did it in slow motion, you probably noticed that as I come down, the wrist kind of does its own motion as well. It's like a flicking, a whipping. If you had a towel or if there's something on your hand, you flick it off. There's a very similar motion going on here. So we're lifting from the elbow, the forearm, and the hand is hanging, the wrist is bending, and then I whip the stick down. Now, notice that the stick stopped right where it began, low. One of the things the students will do at the beginning when they're working on this is that they'll allow the stick to come back up, which is what it wants to do. Like we talked about in other videos, that stick will jump off the drum. It wants to come back away from the drum. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is catching that stick low, is just keeping my grip stationary, kind of locked. So for example, I'm not squeezing the stick here with my grip. What I'm doing is I'm containing the stick. The stick can jiggle inside my hand, but with the force of that accent, my fingers are locked. It's not going to allow the stick to rise up. So there's no squeezing, but there's a containing of the stick, so that when I come down from that accent, I'm able to catch it low, right where I started. So that's what we want to do. So we're picking up the forearm, hanging wrist, whip it down, catch it low. Lifting up the forearm, hanging the wrist, and whipping it down. Now, when we speed that up, the wrist should naturally droop or hang because we are in a very relaxed state. So as we do it quickly, the hand will kind of lag behind because of its weight and the fact that our wrist is relaxed. So I just did a sort of a normal speed. That hand just has a tendency to sort of lag behind the motion of the forearm, and which gives us our whipping motion as well. So if you're tight here, your wrist won't hang as you lift because you kind of have it locked. You have to have the sensitivity to allow it to fall behind the forearm, lag behind the forearm, which gives us our whip, catching it low. Let's go over to left hand, slow motion. We lift up with the forearm, the wrist is hanging, down we whip. Should have caught that a little bit lower. Let's try that again. Lifting the forearm, hanging the wrist, catch it low. Lifting the forearm, hanging the wrist, catch it low. Okay, so that's where we get our power for the accent. Now what we want to be able to do is, I want to turn this into getting two notes. If you notice, what we've got so far is one note for two motions. We're lifting up with the hanging wrist coming down. We got one note. I want to add a note to that. I want to get two notes. We're going to get a note on the way up, upstroke. So we're doing exactly the same motion, but what I want you to do when you lift that forearm is let the wrist, let it hang, but also allow it to hang and fall enough that you get a note on the way up. Let's try that again. Waiting over the drum, lift your forearm, hang the hand. There's your upstroke. An unaccented note, a soft note. And then we come down, loud note. Upstroke, downstroke, up, down. What some of my students will do when they're trying to add this upstroke is they will kind of play it independently of the lift. They'll kind of play this thing and then they'll lift. They're kind of doing a little wrist stroke, then they lift and come down. This unaccented note, this upstroke note, needs to be directly a part of the lift, not separate, but exactly connected to the lift. The moment you start to lift, that's where your upstroke is. You can practice it separately. Now let's complete it. Let's go all the way through. So we're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So upstroke, downstroke. So now we're getting two notes. Once you've got that motion figured out, we're going to add more notes surrounding it. So for example, the first pattern I want to do is we're going to go back to the right side, do our up and our down. I'm going to add the left hand in between, playing taps. Taps are played low, just near the drum. So we're going to get a pattern that looks like this. We're going to go up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, down. What I want you to notice is, well, that the left hand is just maintaining its height here. Don't let it start to come up because then it's going to get loud. So you want to keep it down low. We're doing soft notes combined with loud notes. Keep it low for soft. What I want you to notice is that after this right hand plays its accent, it waits. It doesn't float around or lift up or anything. It waits for the next motion. So let's just check this out. So it's go, stop, go, stop, 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 go, stop. So no floating or lifting while you're waiting to play. Move over to the left side. Stop, go, stop, go, stop. Notice my sticks are spending their time here. There's no gradual drifting up, which is very common. Just stay right over that drum. So once you're feeling comfortable with that, we can work on other accented patterns. What I want to do next is let's do an accented pattern in groups of threes, triplets. So being that it's an odd grouping, the accent will move from the right hand to the left hand, back to the right, over to the left. So switching hands as you go along because it's an odd grouping, three. So let's take a look at this. So that means we're going to go down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap. Non-accents are staying here, floating right here. Let's move on to another pattern. Let's do consecutive accents, 2 in a row, which has an interesting motion to it. First I'll play it slowly. So we're going to go up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up. So what you probably notice here is that the right hand starts its upstroke and then the left hand follows. So they're in motion at the same time in different stages of the motion. So that can be a bit strange at first. So I'll do it one more time for you. So up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down. So with any of these patterns, you really practice them slowly at first. What we need to do primarily is develop the muscle memory, the correct motion. If you try to speed up too quickly, you're going to have errors such as the sticks coming up after the accent when they need to stay down. Perhaps you're lifting your elbow out. Any number of things could be happening if you go quickly too soon. So please just take your time with this. Allow your muscles in your body to memorize the motion before you start to speed up. You should notice that it starts to feel comfortable, like you're not having to overthink it, almost as if it's happening on its own. And all that you're doing is just checking, you're noticing, you're looking at your stick height, watching for it lifting up, keeping it down. You're looking at the motion, you're watching yourself do it, and it seems to be starting to happen on its own correctly. Then you can start to speed up. So when you begin to speed up, the whole motion will become smaller. So initially we want to go slow, so we do that larger motion, training the body and the muscles to move how we want them to move. Now that we're speeding up, that motion is smaller, a little more subtle. So I'll go back to the triplets at a moderate speed. And again, if you speed up even more, that motion will get tighter and smaller. So that's what you do later, speed it up later, spend your time going slow. So that's accents, upstrokes, downstrokes, also known as the Moeller Technique. So take your time with that, be patient, it will pay off. All right, go hit those drums.